Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In the previous video, we look at some methods that are applied on a list. That is, we looked at copy when we are actually creating a copy of an existing list. Then we also looked at reverse. We also looked at sort when we want to sort our list. Then we also looked at some function like in to check whether a certain element is within a certain list. Now, today we want to look at ways in which we can create a list. Ways of creating a list. There are certain ways. One of the ways is explicitly create a list. Explicitly create a list, whereby we actually declare like names. When we want to create a list of names, angle brackets here, then we end our names here. Peter, John, James. This is explicitly creating a list. Then we can also create a list through using a loop or by using a loop, creating a list by using a for loop. This is whereby we declare an empty list like names, let's say numbers. Nums is equal to my angle brackets here, but here is an empty list at first. Then we say for I in range. Then we put our range here. Let's say from 1 to 11. We want to generate a list of numbers from 1 to 10. Then we say nums dot append. I think that method append, we looked at it in the previous lecture. Then we are now saying print nums. This is now a created list. That is the second method, creating a list by using a for loop. Then there is another way of creating a list, which is using list comprehension. Using list comprehension. Thus, you are creating a list using what? List comprehension. How do we create a list using list comprehension? We are saying numbers 1 is equals to angle bracket here. Then we enter our The syntax for creating a list comprehension is like this. I for I in range from where to? From 1 to 11. If I divided by or modulus of 2 is equal to 0. Now let me try to explain the syntax. Now we are saying we have got four parts on using a list comprehension. The first I is the output expression. The second is a variable. And the range is the input sequence or a collection from which our input is coming from. Then there is a predicate which checks whether a certain condition is true or false. Now, let me explain. Like, first I represent my output expression. Then my next I represents my variable. Then the range that is from 1 to 11 represent my input sequence. Or I can just say a domain in which I am getting my what? My input. Then, or a collection. It can be either a list, a set, or a dictionary where I am getting those sequences. Then there is I modulus 2 is equal to 0. This one is a predicate which checks whether if the element is true or false, such that is decided on the output that we are going to have. Now, let me go on and look at how we can implement this in Jupyter Notebook. Now, let's go on Jupyter Notebook and find out how can we do it. Right? Let's create a new folder here. Let's look for an untitled folder here. Let's rename this one Python list comprehension. Now we have got our Python list comprehension. Let's open and try to create. Where is the folder? See here, let's go on to open our notebook here. Now, first of all, we look at how to create a list using Explicit. creation of lists. Now, that's when we bring in something like numbers here equal to angle brackets. We have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. This is my list. Let's just print my list. This was nicely done. Now, this is my list. Explicitly creating a list. Now, let's create a list using a for loop. Now, first of all, when we want to create a list, we first of all declare our empty list nums is equals to angle brackets. This is an empty list. Then we now bring in a for loop for I in range from 1 to 11. Then nums dot, we append this one by the element that are being generated by the for loop. We looked at append method in the previous lecture. Now let's try to reprint nums here and find out. Now look, the same elements are created from using explicit and by using a loop. Let's look at the third method, creating a list using list comprehension. Creating a list using list comprehension. Now, we say nums to 1 is equal to angle bracket. Now we are supposed to enter the list comprehension syntax. That is I for I in range from where to where? From 1 to 10. This is how we create a list using list comprehension, where we explained that the first is the output expression, second I is a variable, I and 1 to 11 is an input sequence or the domain or a collection from which we get our what? Our output. Then there is a predicate, which this predicate is optional. We can actually have it, or we can generate a list without having that predicate. Now, we can print nums1. Now we have our output 1, 2, 3 as the same output as from other list. Now let's try to, here I didn't include nums1, the predicate optional. Let's try to bring a certain, how to create a predicate, a list using also including a predicate. Let's try to do it. Right, nums2 is equal to angle brackets I multiplied by 1 or multiplied by 2 for I in range from where? From 1 to 20. If I modulus of 2 is equal to 0, then we print our nums2. Print nums2. Then we find out what is the output. Look at that. 2 is being multiplied by what? 1, first one, 1 divided by 2 is this going to leave a remainder? The answer is yes, so it is being ignored. So then it's 2 multiplied by 2 divided by 2 is equals to 0, which is true, the predicate, where the predicate works, and then the output is supposed to 2 multiplied by 2, giving an 8. The same applies going to the next number, which is 3. 3 modulus of 2 is equals to 1, false, so that one is skipped. Going to the next, 4 modulus of 2 is equals to 0, true, then divide that one by 2, then multiply that one by 2, giving S8, continuously going stage by stage and giving an output of this list. Now, let's also look at how can we create a list, a nested list, by using list comprehension. How to create a what? Creating nested lists by using list comprehension. Right? Or before that, let's first of all, before going deeper, let's look at first creating a list from another list using list comprehension. That is, we have a list here, nums 3 is equal to angle brackets 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 2, 1, 2, then 9. Now we want to create a list from an existing list by using list comprehension. So let's say the list that we are creating is list nums3 is equal to angle brackets num for num in nums3 but we are only going to have that if num modulus of 2 is equal to 1. Let's print and find out what the list look like. Print list nums. Then we find out. Now look, the list is 3519. We can also apply a multiplication to our list, like multiply by 2. The output, multiply that output by 2 and find out what is the outcome. Look, the list is changing. Now let's just check before actually moving on further to other a bit more detailed about list comprehensions and list and other Python collections or containers. Let's look at what we looked at today. Now, first of all, we look at ways of creating a list. First, explicitly create a list by writing a list, creating a list by using a for loop. This is first of all creating an empty list, then use the append method to add list elements within a list. Then we looked at using list comprehension in creating a list. We also looked at how to create a list from an existing list using list comprehension. All the information we can find it in as PDF file in our Facebook page, in our Facebook group, Planet Tech. There is a Facebook page, Planet Tech. Right for today, thank you for viewing. Please don't forget to subscribe.